Hello everyone, Cindy here with Monarch Mom DIY. Thank you so much for joining me today on my channel where I love to bring you the best tips and tools for creating beautiful home decor on a budget. Today I have 3 projects for you that I made using 3 items I found at a local thrift store and then used some other supplies to create beautiful decor for Christmas. So I hope that you're inspired to look around at your thrift stores. Things I usually look for are wood items like really interesting wood frames, wood shutters, things like that, wood cutting boards. Those are just some things that I love to work with. So with all that being said, let's get crafting. So for today's first project, I'm going to take a really cool wood picture frame I found at a thrift store. We're going to repurpose it into a really neat Christmas tree sign using some paint sticks, a little music book I got at a thrift store, and also one of the ceiling tiles or wall tiles from Dollar Tree. So I'm just taking some of these pages and repurposing them, kind of making torn edges and getting enough pieces that will allow me to cover the back of the frame. This frame thankfully did not have any glass in it when I bought it, and I always worry about what to do with the glass. You could Mod Podge the music sheets right onto the glass as well, but I'm just putting a layer of matte finish Mod Podge on this backing of the frame, and then I'm going to apply the little pieces of music. They will overlap each other, and then you'll just put extra Mod Podge under until you have the entire back covered. Once that was dry, I'm going over everything now with a layer of Mod Podge. This will just help all the little edges stay down and give a nice uniform finish. So brushing all the different directions just to make sure nothing is sticking up, and then we'll let that dry. Once that's dry, I'm flipping it over onto my cutting mat and using my little fingertip knife, we're just going to clean up all of those edges where we had some of the music paper sticking over the edge. Next, I'm cutting some pieces of 5-gallon paint stick. My longest one is 9.5, then 8, then 6.5, then 5, then 3.5, then 2. So I just made them shorter by 1.5 inches each time. Then taking my wall tile, I'm going to use my Waverly chalk paint in the color Fern, and I'm just going to cover this entirely. It doesn't have to go all the way to the edges because we're going to end up cutting pieces off of it and let that dry. Once our Mod Podge backing is dry, we can put it back into the frame, just pressing down the little metal pins to make sure it holds it firmly in place. I did not do any painting or dry brushing on the frame. I thought it was great the color that it was. Now that my wall tile is dry, I'm going to take my paint stick pieces that will be my Christmas tree, and I'm tracing each one with a Sharpie marker onto the back of the wall tile here, and then we'll cut out a piece to glue to the front. Now notice I'm kind of mixing up the direction and the placement of the sticks. I don't want it just to look like the pattern was cut in slices and stayed. You'll see what I mean here when you see the pieces cut out. The pattern is very different on each piece going up the tree. Then I'm just hot gluing the piece of the wall tile to the paint stick. It's okay that it's a little bit bigger than the paint stick as long as it is completely covering the paint stick. Once we had those all glued on, we're going to take Waverly chalk paint in, I believe I did plaster to kind of match the off-white of the music paper, and we're just kind of going over very lightly with this chippy brush so that some of the raised texture and design from the wall tile comes out. Gives this a nice antique look to it for our finished product. Once those were all dry, I did spray them with a clear matte spray, and then I'm just laying them out on top of our music paper, trying to get them centered and spaced out so I have a little piece of a branch at the bottom for the trunk, and then a little gold star sticker from Dollar Tree at the top. And then I'm just going to hot glue each of the pieces of my tree to the backing sheet. And here's the finished project. I've been wanting to do this for a while and was so glad to find the perfect frame at the thrift store. If you're stopping by my channel for the first time today, a big welcome to you. I'm so glad you found me. I hope you'll consider sticking around by hitting that subscribe button. And I hope everyone hits the bell and sets your notifications to all, so YouTube should notify you each time I upload a new video or go live here on my channel. And if you are one of my many returning viewers or subscribers, thank you so much for coming back each and every week. For a complete list of all the supplies I used in today's projects, you can find those in the description box below the title of this video. You will also find links to my Amazon storefront and my Magnolia Design Co. website. For DIY number 2, we're going to repurpose a cutting board that I got at a thrift store. We're going to make it Christmassy using some greenery, one of these bells, a scarf from Dollar Tree, as well as this white fuzzy mop thing. So I did sand this, tried to get some of the cut marks sanded down, and then I'm using Waverly's chalk paint in the color Lacquer to paint this middle big section of the cutting board. Once the red was dry, I'm going to use white to do all around the outside edge of the cutting board, and then I'm going to leave the little groove empty or unpainted because we're going to do something else there in a little bit. Now, taking this scarf, I just Google searched mitten shape image, found one and saved it on my computer, and then I just printed it this size. I went ahead and printed 2 of them, and now I'm pinning each pattern to 2 layers of the buffalo check fleece scarf from Dollar Tree, so that when I trim around the shape, I'm also cutting out 2 identical pieces of the scarf. Then using my Sure Bonder Cool Shot glue gun with fabric glue sticks, I'm going around and I am gluing my mittens together except for the bottom, and that is where we will put our polyfill inside to make these mittens a little puffy. So I'm making 2 that are identical. You use very little of this polyfill. I bought my big bag a while ago at Walmart and it's still basically full. So stuff a little bit in there, however full you want it, and then we can glue it shut using that same fabric glue. Next, we'll take one of these little dusting mop covers, I guess it is. If you look inside, it's not solid. The puffy part, fuzzy part is in rows. So that's what I'm trying to do, is I'm trying to expose the fabric between the rows so I can easily cut one little strip of this. It will shed a little bit, but just pull off the loose pieces and then you're good. So we're going to glue a piece of this at the cuff of each of the mittens. Just adds some more texture and makes it look nice and fuzzy warm for winter. Now that our mittens are done, we'll come back to our cutting board, and I'm going to take this skinny nautical rope from Dollar Tree and I'm going to glue this around in that little crevice that goes all the way around. This just adds another texture, and this was a lot easier than trying to paint it, and I didn't really want to just leave it plain. So I'm just putting some hot glue around and then laying my nautical rope right in the center of that space between the red and the white. So I decided I wanted to add some wording to the bottom of the cutting board. I'm going to use just the words "Let It Snow" from this winter boho rainbow stencil that I have from Magnolia. So you can see I'm going to put the rest of it back on the backing sheet. I'm just going to fuzz the part of the stencil that has the words a few times so that it has a little bit of lint so that I can pick it up easily off of the cutting board. Once I have the words centered where I want them, I'm just going to take a little bit of my white chalk paste, drag that across the mesh of the stencil, and then we will have perfectly stenciled words. I think this adds a lot to this project. And then once we have the "Let It Snow," I'm also going to use 2 of the smallest snowflakes in my new snowflake stencils, one on either side of the words, again using the white chalk paste just to finish filling in that space on the bottom. Next, I'm just going to hot glue some jute twine to the back of each of the mittens so that they're kind of strung together. And once that's dry on there, on the first mitten, we'll go up through the hole there at the top. I guess that's one side of the cutting board, but it's the top for me. And then coming back down to the other mitten, we'll glue the other end of the jute twine. Now to add some greenery to the top of the project, I'm trying something new. I'm trying to use this floral wire to make everything stay together rather than hot gluing all the time, because I don't feel like that's very permanent. So using this thin floral wire from Dollar Tree, I'm kind of wrapping it a bunch of times, pulling it as tight as I can, and then I'll go in and add another piece of greenery and wrap it 5 or 6 more times, then add another piece. So I just keep building this from the center. I also decided to tie one of these bells that I also got in a big bag from a thrift store around the center so that it was hanging down. And then once I had all the greenery I wanted, I just added a few of these little styrofoam berries from another floral pick that I had. Next, I added just a little bit of hot glue at the top to hold the jute twine in place that was holding the mittens. And then we'll put a good amount of glue there and glue down our entire piece with our greenery and our bell. And this is the final look. I love how this piece just kind of came together with a lot of different elements, and I think it's a really pretty piece for the Christmas and winter season. If you are on Facebook and have not done so already, I hope you will head over to my Monarch Mom DIY Facebook page. Follow it. I have many DIYs that I do there live 3 times a week, and those are different than the projects that I show here on YouTube. If you love budget home decor DIY videos like this, I hope you'll consider giving this video a thumbs up and leaving a comment that lets YouTube know that people are enjoying my content and they'll show it to more and more viewers. For today's third project, we're going to take this large wood shutter that I got at a thrift store. I actually bought 2 of them. It's pretty large, about 5 feet tall. We're also going to use 2 of these candy cane wreath forms and some burlap along with some greenery. So I have this red burlap ribbon. This one is from Walmart. I just took a length of it and then I'm going to cut it down the middle to make it a little bit skinnier. And I do end up also cutting the finished edge off each of the half pieces. So it just looks more like raw burlap. Then taking the natural burlap color ribbon, I'm going to wrap the entire candy cane wreath form with this burlap. I did this kind of to make a base layer and help cover up the bars or the pieces there of the wreath form. So tack it down with a little bit of hot glue in certain places, and then I'm just going to, like I said, wrap the entire candy cane wreath form. Now they're both basically facing the same direction, so because I'm going to make these kind of crisscrossing, the back of one of the wreath forms will be the front for one of them. So just wrap it, take your time, try to angle it and get out any buckling and get it as flat as you can. Once I had both of my candy canes wrapped in the natural colored burlap, then I took my half strips of the red and I'm going to now wrap that pretty loosely as far as spacing around the burlap candy cane. Once I got both of the candy canes wrapped, I decided I wanted to add some wording to the top of the sign. So the only piece of wood I could find that was the right size and shape was this actual wall shelf from Dollar Tree. So once I sanded the holes, I filled them in with hot glue. This is the first time I tried this, and it is actually really fast. So if you just squeeze some of that clear hot glue down in there, it dries really fast. You can just rub away any excess, and then if you want to, go ahead and sand where the holes were as well. And then you can just paint over the entire thing with a solid color, and you won't even see where the holes were. So once I had that done and the holes were sanded, I took my Waverly chalk paint in the color Crimson, and I'm just gonna give this sign one layer on the front and all the edges. Now while the sign is drying, I'm coming back to my two candy canes, and I'm going to use some zip ties to connect them together, going through the burlap and around the metal frame of the wreath forms. And I want to do this in a couple places so that the zip ties are not seen from the front. So it does take a little bit of finagling, but you can get the zip tie in and around the burlap and also around the metal pieces of the wreath form. I did 2 zip ties to connect the 2 candy canes together, and then you'll see we'll use a couple more to actually connect these to the shutter in just a little bit. But I'm loving how this is coming together. I'd love to know what you guys think about it, or what you would have done with a big wooden shutter. Just to distress the edges of my sign a little bit, I'm just gonna go along the edges with my little fingertip or handheld sander, and then I'm gonna use my smaller size of my skinny font stencils. We're gonna do the word Christmas along the bottom, and then once that's dry, we'll do Merry above it. I love these letters because they're, like I said, a nice skinny font, and these fit perfectly. All the letters to spell Christmas fit perfectly across the length of this wood plank. And same as before, just using a little bit of the white chalk paste, we're going to easily stencil these letters onto our board. You can see, obviously, I'm going to have to move that S to the end of the word, and then I'll have to do the same thing for Mary, where I have to use the R twice. But these are just such an easy way to add wording. If you don't have a stencil that says something specific, you can use these individual letters to spell whatever you want. Once my Merry Christmas sign was dry, you can see I glued it to the top there, and I apologize for the angle of this camera shot, but this shutter is literally so big that I had to move to the floor now to finish putting everything together. So I apologize for the workout gear that you are getting to see right now. Anyway, I'm using zip ties to go in and around one piece of the shutter, and I'm zip tying these 2 Christmas floral bunches that I got from Hobby Lobby on 50% off. I was not thinking about the greenery when I spray painted my shutter green, But I think this worked out okay to have greenery that was flocked and also had some pine cones. I also zip tied the candy canes to the shutter, glued my little sign to the top, and I was really happy. I added a bow to the middle of the candy canes, and I was really happy with how this turned out, and this will look so great on my porch. Thanks again so much for joining me today. As always, I love for you to put in the comments which of these projects was your favorite, maybe a new technique that you learned or something you hadn't thought about doing before. And we'll see you guys next time. Take care.